Oh my god, I'm live on YouTube.
Nice.
That is buck nutty. Let's see if it's working. There it is. Look how cute the little cat is. Aw. With a C. Katarina spinning really fast and then taking off and majestically flying away.jpg. Wait, this is a new start. Oh my god, my YouTube short got 99 views. Help, dog is wet, no idea how. Take him to vet? How did he even get wet? Sometimes Max walks in here and he's soaking wet and I don't know how because there's no water anywhere. This is a new start, Ray. The new me. Which is just me. I don't understand what the made for kids thing is. But like some of the little peep videos I couldn't add to a playlist because they were made for kids. I was like, what the heck? What the heck? Whoa. Oh. Just started raining too. Get ready for snow. That's so cool. Ooh.
York Times article, in my mind, made that was a big shift because when the New York Times is reporting about it and saying that this is major news and this is real and there's video evidence that they can't ignore, when you talk to high-level people at the government and people like Commander David Fravor, who had that infamous spotting off of the coast of San Diego, when you hear about people like that that are very reputable, it starts to change the conversation in a lot of people's eyes.
Right. See, it used to be that one person would see something in the sky and say, look, Martha, look, there's something up there. Now things have changed. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. That is the gold standard for looking for these objects. Not just one person, but several people that are reputable. Not just radar, but visual sighting, infrared sensors, telescopic evidence. Now we have multiple sightings by multiple modes. And so the burden of proof has shifted. It used to be the burden of proof was on the people who believed in UFOs. They saw something, prove it. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the Pentagon, to the military. Now they have to prove that these aren't extraterrestrial. And so I think there's been a sea change in the last just several years. 50 years ago, there was a congressional hearing, and it was coming out of Project Blue Book. And there was a lot of laughter and a lot of jokes about little green men in outer space. 50 years ago, that's the way it was. Now, things have changed. Now people are looking at are they a threat militarily? What kinds of sensors do we have? What kind of metrics do we have? We now have, frame by frame, an analysis of these objects. These objects travel between Mach 5 and Mach 20. That's 20 times the speed of sound. These objects can zigzag, and we can measure the g-force inside this object. The g-forces are several hundred times the force of gravity. In other words, any living person's bones would be crushed by these objects, so they're probably drones of some sort. These objects can drop 70,000 feet in a few seconds. Think about that. It can drop a tremendous distance in just a few seconds, and they can go underwater. This is something that we didn't realize before, but yes, they can actually go underwater. And they also move without creating an exhaust or breaking the sound barrier.
Dr. Michio
So
Kaku.
these are things that we can now document frame by
He's a
frame,
great dude.
looking at these videotapes.
So for yourself, what was the shift? And how did you feel about UFOs, say like 10, 15 years ago?
Well, there is this giggle factor, and it's the third rail, of course, of your scientific reputation, if you believe in these things. But the evidence is accumulating over the last several years. Now, when I was first approached by Carolyn Corey, the producer of this film, A Tear in the Sky, I was skeptical. I said to myself, come on. I mean, 5 days? 5 days you're going to look for flying saucers in the sky? What happens if the aliens are camera shy and they don't show up in 5 days? So I was pleasantly surprised when they actually found something. They actually have photographic evidence of objects that can gyrate just the way the Pentagon has said. And so we now have a sea change. A center of gravity has changed with regards to looking at these objects. We no longer simply look at one individual seeing something in the sky. No, we demand hours of videotape, multiple sightings by multiple modes. That's the gold standard now.
So what do you think is happening? Do you think that this is something that maybe another government from another country has created that far surpasses our abilities, or do you think that this is coming from somewhere else?
Well, the Pentagon has listed, I think, 5 different options. One option, of course, is that they're weather balloons or something that's an artifact of our space program. Maybe a piece of rocket that is plunging back into the Earth's atmosphere. That's one category. Another category is anomalous weather events. They happen, and they have to be looked at very carefully. But the last option is other. That is not just the Russians or the Chinese, because these objects apparently can gyrate faster than what the Chinese and the Russians can muster, but it opened the door to the possibility of other. They didn't specify what other was, but you can fill in the dots yourself. Now, one possibility for other is hypersonic drones. We see that in warfare now. The Russians, in the Battle of Ukraine, is actually using hypersonic drones to hit targets inside Ukraine. To be hypersonic, you have to go faster than Mach 5. Anything faster than 5 times the speed of sound is called hypersonic. And so the Russians are now fielding hypersonic drones in warfare. But you see, this is something just in the last few months. These sightings, they go back decades into the past, with objects executing these gyrations decades ago. And that's why you have to take them seriously.
So the Commander David Fravor event that we talked about off the Nimitz, that was 2004. Do we have an accurate understanding about military capability in terms of like drones and propulsion systems from 2004? Or are there things that are classified that we are not going to have access to? Like, is it possible that, 18 years ago, they had the capability to have a vehicle or a drone move this way that that information has just not been released?
Well, 2 years ago, the United States military admitted that it stopped working on these hypersonic drones. Why? They're unstable. They zigzag. And that's why the Russians have put a premium on this technology to evade our Star Wars program. The Russians wanted a rocket that can maneuver and therefore outwit a stationary Star Wars system designed to shoot down these drones.
Right.
So that's why the Russians have put a priority on this, and they've now fielding it in warfare. We actually see them as a military weapon. 2 years ago, the United States military stopped its program. They're too unstable. They were not reliable, and it was not worth the amount of money to put into it because the military was invested in the Star Wars program, not the anti-Star Wars program. But because Vladimir Putin announced the hypersonic drones, then the United States military said, oops, nope, we have to get into the game too. So now the United States is also working on hypersonic drones as well as the Chinese. So the Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans are all working on these things. But you can see how primitive they are. We're talking about objects that defy the known laws of aerodynamics with a technology beyond what we have today. And so that's why people are scratching their heads. Whose are these things if they're not the Chinese, the Russians, or the United States?
So one of the main points of contention is the lack of visible propulsion method, right? There's no, essentially, there's no heat signature. There's nothing that we understand to be present that normally exists when something is going at a tremendous rate of speed.
That's right. Not only that, these objects create no sonic booms. When you exceed the sound barrier, you create a gigantic boom that is then shatters windows and can be heard miles around. These objects can effortlessly break the sound barrier and not create a sonic boom. And they don't create any exhaust. We don't see any exhaust trail from these objects. So either they're an optical illusion of some sort, or they have a set of laws of physics beyond what we can muster. Now, if they are an optical illusion, if an object were to move in front of your eyes, traveling at a very slow velocity, but you don't know how far they are away, you may think that object is very far away from you, traveling at enormous velocities. So a weather balloon drifting in front of your eyes can simulate an object traveling at hypersonic velocities if you think that weather balloon is far away from you. So how do you tell the difference? Well, you look at wind patterns. It turns out that many of these sightings, these objects defy the direction of the wind. If they are weather balloons that you confuse with a flying saucer, then they would be moving with the direction of the wind. But these objects do not do that. These objects can go against the direction of the wind. Not only that, but we have multiple sightings. If an object is very, very far away, if an object is close to you, but you think it's far away, then it's traveling at an enormous velocity while it's actually just drifting in front of your eyes. How do you tell the difference? By having multiple sensors: radar, infrared sensors, visual sighting. Then you can tell how far this object is away from you, and then you can say that, no, it's an optical illusion. Well, we do that now. We have multiple sightings of these objects. By radar, we know how the velocity, the distance. Each time it comes out to be real. And so that's why we're scratching our heads. Who has this capability? And the answer is, we don't know.
Is there anything that's theoretical that you're aware of that could be applied, like from some other planet or some other galaxy or whatever, that something that maybe we have theorized that could be responsible for the way these things are able to move?
Well, you know, when I talk to my friends who are physicists like myself about these things, they sort of like laugh, giggle, their eyes roll up to the heavens, and they say something very simple, that a rocket using conventional means would take 70,000 years to reach us from the nearest star. Therefore, these objects cannot exist. 70,000 years for a Saturn rocket traveling at 25,000 miles per hour to go from a nearest star to the planet Earth. That's why most scientists disregard these sightings, because they defy the laws of Einstein.
But isn't that kind of silly? Isn't that kind of like saying, like, you can't, you know how long it would take you to get a horse from Los Angeles to Sydney, Australia? Isn't that kind of like saying that?
Exactly. And that's why I say that that assumes that these aliens or whatever are maybe 100 years more advanced than us. But open your mind to the possibility that they are 1,000 years more advanced than us. 1,000 years is nothing compared to the age of the universe.
Right.
The universe is about 13 billion plus years old. That's how the age of the universe. And so the age of a civilization, just a few thousand years ahead of us, that is just a blink of an eye to the universe itself. And once you go to higher energies, the laws of physics begin to break down. The laws of Einstein and the laws of the quantum theory break down at something called the Planck energy. Why is that important? That's what I do for a living. I work on something called string theory, which lives at the Planck energy. The Planck energy is 10 to the 19 billion electron volts. That is a quadrillion times more powerful than our most powerful atom smasher outside Geneva, Switzerland. Any civilization that can harness the Planck energy would be able to become masters of space and time. Space and time as we know it become unstable at the Planck energy, which is far beyond anything that we can muster here on the planet Earth. So, we physicists theorize, how advanced do you have to be to access the Planck energy? Well, we rank them. The Kardashev scale says that there could be type 1, type 2, or type 3 civilizations. A type 1 civilization is maybe 100 years more advanced than us, to maybe 1,000 years, sort of like Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon. They control the weather. Volcanoes, earthquakes, anything planetary, they control. That's type 1. Then there's type 2. Type 2 is stellar. They harness the power of an entire star, like Star Trek. Star Trek would be a typical type 2 civilization where they manipulate entire stars. Then there's type 3. Type 3 is galactic. They roam the galactic space lanes. They play with black holes, like the Empire of the Star Wars series would be a typical type 3 civilization. Then the next question is, what type do you have to be to harness the Planck energy? The energy at which space and time become unstable, where wormholes may develop, gateways through space and time, portals through empty space. You have to be type 2 or most likely type 3. Then the next question is, how long will it take before you become type 3? Well, we are maybe 100 years away from being type 1. We're maybe a few thousand years from being type 2, and we're maybe 100,000 years from being type 3. And 100,000 years is nothing on a galactic scale. The age of the universe is, as I said, over 13 billion years old. And so once a civilization reaches the Planck energy, that is a type 3 civilization, space and time become your playground.
How would you, as a higher intelligence, represent yourself to a lesser intelligence?
Do you think they saw what they say they saw?
It didn't just start showing up in 1947.
How hard do you think it is for aliens to communicate with humans?
What do we believe in? We believe in technology. So you show yourself as a form of technology, right? But the common thread is you're not alone. And there's something else here with you. And there's something that's, as you said, watching you.
You are a professor at Stanford studying the biology of the human organism at the level of individual cells. So let me ask first the big, ridiculous philosophical question. What is the most beautiful or fascinating aspect of human biology at the level of the cell to you?
The micro machines and the nano machines that proteins make and become, that to me is the most interesting. The fact that you have this basically dynamic computer within every cell that's constantly processing its environment. And at the heart of it is DNA, which is a dynamic machine, a dynamic computation process. People think of the DNA as a linear code. It's codes within codes within codes, and it is actually the epigenetic state that's doing this amazing processing. I mean, if you ever wanted to believe in God, just look inside the cell.
So DNA is both information and computer.
Exactly.
How did that computer come about? A big, continuing on the philosophical question, is this both scientific and philosophical? How did life originate on Earth, do you think? How did this, at every level, so the very first step and the fascinating complex computer that is DNA, that is multicellular organism, and then maybe the fascinating complex computer that is the human mind?
Well, I think you have to take just one more step back to the complex computer that is the universe, right? All of the so-called particles or the waves that people think the universe is made of, and appears to me at least to be a computational process. And embedded in that is biology, right? So all the atoms of a protein, et cetera, sit in that computational matrix. From my point of view, it's computing something. It's computing towards something. It was created in some ways, if you want to believe in God, and I don't know that I do, but if you want to believe in something, the universe was created, or at least enabled, to allow for life to form. And so the DNA, if you ask where does DNA come from, and you can go all the way back to Richard Dawkins and the selfish gene hypotheses. The way I look at DNA, though, is it is not a moment in time. It assumes the context of the body and the environment in which it's going to live. And so if you want to ask a question of where and how does information get stored, DNA,
Oh my God.
is only 3 billion base pairs long, contains more information than I think the entire computational
Holy.
memory resources of our current technology. Because who and what you are is both what you were as an egg all the way through to the day you die, and it embodies all the different cell types and organs in your body. And so it's a computational reservoir of information and expectation that
I'll go
you
rock
become.
about
So actually, I would sort of turn it around
Nasher
a different
later.
way and say, if you wanted to create the best memory storage system possible, you could reverse engineer what a human is and create a DNA memory system that is not just the linear version, but is also everything that it could become.
When we're talking about DNA, we're talking about Earth and the environment creating DNA. So you're talking about trying to come up with an optimal computer for this particular environment.
Right.
So if you reverse engineer that computer, what do you mean by considering all the possible things it could become?
So who you are today, right? So 3 billion bits of information does not explain Lex Friedman.
Yeah.
Doesn't explain me, right? But the DNA embodies the expectation of the environment in which you will live,
Yes.
and grow and become. So all the information that is you, right, is actually not only embedded in the DNA, but it's embedded in the context of the world in which you grow into and develop, right? But so all that information, though, is packed in the expectation of what the DNA expects to see.
Interesting. So like some of the information, is that accurate to say is stored outside the body?
Exactly, yeah. The information is stored outside because there's a context of expectation. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, to linger on this point, if we were to run Earth over again
What?
a million times,
Whoops.
how many different versions of this type of computer would we get?
I think it would be different each time. I mean, if you assume there's no such thing as fate, right, and it's not all pre-programmed, and that there is some sort of, let's say, variation or randomness at the beginning, you would get as many different versions of life as you could imagine. And I don't think it would all be, unless there's something built into the substrate of the universe. It wouldn't always be left-handed proteins, right?
But I wonder what the flap of a butterfly wing, what effects it has, because it's possible that this system is really good at finding the efficient answer, and maybe the efficient answer is there's only a small finite set of them for this particular environment.
Exactly, exactly. That's the kind of, in a way, the anthropomorphic universe of the multiverse expectations, right? That, you know, there's probably a zillion other kinds of universes out there if you believe in multiverse theory. We only live in the ones where the rules are such that life like ours can exist.
So using that logic, how many alien civilizations do you think are out there? There's like trillions of environments,
Oh my god.
aka planets, or maybe you can think even bigger than planets. How many lifelike organisms do you think are out there thriving, and maybe how many do you think are long gone but were once here?
I think, well, innumerable. I think in terms of the ones
Greater
that
than
are
zero.
much greater than zero. I mean, I would just be surprised. What a waste, right, of all that space just for.
Because it's possible that this system is really good at finding the efficient answer, and maybe the efficient answer is there's only a small finite set of them for this particular environment.
Exactly, exactly. That's the kind of, in a way, the anthropomorphic universe of the multiverse expectations, right? That, you know, there's probably a zillion other kinds of universes out there if you believe in multiverse theory. We only live in the ones where the rules are such that life like ours can exist.
So using that logic, how many alien civilizations do you think are out there? There's like trillions of environments, aka planets, or maybe you can think even bigger than planets. How many lifelike organisms do you think are out there thriving, and maybe how many do you think are long gone?
I think, well, innumerable. I think in terms of the
Greater
ones that
than
are
zero.
much greater than zero. I mean, I would just be surprised. What a waste, right, of all that space just for us, if we're never going to get
Oops.
there. That would be my first.
Did you get
way to
Lulu
think about
again?
it. But second, I mean,
Do you like Ludens? It's so good.
I remember when I was about 7
Not
or 8
against
years old, and I
six.
would love if any of you listeners
So
could
not
find
against the six.
this National Geographic. I remember opening the page of the National Geographic. I was about, again, 7 to 10 years old. And it was sort of a current picture of the universe. It was around probably 1968, 1969. And I just remember looking at it and thinking, what kinds of empires have risen and fallen across that space that we'll never know about? And isn't that sad that we know nothing about something so grand? And so I've always been a reader of science fiction because I like the creative ideas of what people come up with. And I especially like science fiction writers that base it in good science, but base it also in evolution. That if you evolve a civilization from something lifelike, right, some sort of biology, its assumptions about the universe will come from the environment in which it grew up. So, for instance, Larry Niven is a great writer, and he imagines different kinds of civilizations. In some cases, what happens if intelligence evolved from a herd animal? Right? Would you lead from behind? Right? Would you be, in his case, one of them were the so-called puppeteers. And to them, the moral imperative is cowardice. You put other people forward to run the risk for you, right? And so he writes entire books around that premise. There's another guy, David Brin is his name, and he writes the...
What the heck? Mundo throws a car.
Uplift Universe books.
He's that big?
And in those, he takes different...
He's large.
...intelligences, each from a different evolutionary background.
He
and
rolls
then
it.
he posits a civilization based around where and what they came from. And so, to me, I mean, that's just fun. But I mean, back to your original question, is how many are there? I think as many stars as we can see. Now, how many are currently there? I don't know. I mean, that's the whole That's the whole question of, you know, how long can a civilization last before it runs out of steam? And you, for instance, does it just get bored, or does it transcend to something else, or does it say, I've seen enough and I'm done?
What does running out of steam look like? It could be destroy itself or get bored.
You know, it's or we've done everything we can, and they just decide to stop. I don't know. I just don't know.
It's the Elon Musk worry that we stop reproducing, or we slow down the reproduction rate to where the population can go to zero.
Can go to zero, and we can't, and we collapse. I mean, so the only way to get around that is perhaps create enough machines with AI to take care of us.
What could possibly go wrong? You've talked to people that told stories of UFO encounters.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most fascinating to you about the stories of these UFO encounters that you've heard that people have told you?
The similarity of them, the uniformity of the stories. Now, I just want to say up front, a lot of people think that when I speculate, I believe something.
Right.
That's not true, right? Speculation is just creativity. Speculation is the beginning of hypothesis. None of what I hear in terms of the anecdotes do I necessarily believe are they true. But I still find them fascinating to listen to, because at some level they're still raw data. And you have to listen. And once you start to hear the same story again and again, then you have to say, well, there might be something to it. I mean, maybe it's some kind of a Jungian background in the human mind and human consciousness that creates these stories again and again.
They're talking about me in all chat. I'm honored.
Pre-programmed something.
Cat roamed 3 times.
About this kind of thing, the collective unconscious. But actually, one of the most interesting ones I find.
Morgana roamed mid, and I killed her.
Message that you're not taking care of your world.
Who,
This
May?
came long before climate change. It came long before many kinds of, you know, let's say current day memes around, you know, taking care of our planet, pollution, etc. And so, you know, for instance, perhaps the best example of this, the one that I find the most fascinating, is a story out of Zimbabwe. 50 or 60 children one afternoon in Zimbabwe. It was a well-educated group of white and black children who at lunchtime in the playground saw a craft. And they saw little men. And they all ran into the teachers, and they told the same story, and they drew the same pictures. And the message several of them got was, you are not taking care of your planet. And it got, you know, there's actually a movie coming out on this episode. And 30 years later now, the people who were there, the children who've now grown up, say it happened to us. Now, did it happen? Was it some sort of hallucination, or was it an imposed hallucination by something? Was it material? I don't know. But these kids were 7 to 10 years old. You see them on video. 7 to 10-year-olds can't lie like that. And so, you know...
This scientist is telling a story, and there's a movie coming out about it. He said there were 60 kids in Zimbabwe, and they were going to school. They were just at school. And they saw a craft in the field and walked up to it. And all the kids had the same story. They said it felt like we weren't taking care of our planet. Like, that's the message they got after they got back from it. All of them. All 50 or 60 kids. What the... Like, what the hell? That many? Oh, that's wild. They were like 7 years old. Oh, Finn's a peanut. Finn, are you a peanut? No. Peanut cat, eating peanuts, getting fat. No! I messed up. I got excited. Fuck. Oh no. Crap, I mean. Gosh. Set is hitting things. Oh my god. Is that a red cane? Oh my god. How? He's like, no, you do. You don't smell enough like me. You don't smell enough. Here. Don't you want to smell like a pillberry? You're not smelling like a melon here. I don't think Melon would like what he was smelling. Oh, crap. Oh, they're doing it. They're doing it. Everyone was talking shit on our Lux, and now she's popping off. And now she's throwing it back at their support. Oh my god. Mom, you're not smelling like a melon. What the heck? He does? Do you think it could be when he's itching his ears and stuff with his claw? Because, like, they go, like,
No, I think it's
Oh, like a good type?
yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay.
An enemy has been slain. An ally has been slain.
No, he got sucked.
Enemy killing spree.
Oh, freaking hell. I just got a cold wind on my feet. Are you blowing cold wind at my feet?
No.
It's Finn's tail wagging cold wind at my feet.
Is unstoppable.
Yeah, get him, Finny.
Be watching stuff to keep up with.
He let you wash it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Destroyed a turret.
What class? You ready, buddy?
Ah! Oh no, my bones! Oh, bones. Literally got yanked out. Stay put, little man.
No, it's not.
Finn, if you sit still, it'll feel good. How's it looking now?
Still right around the edges.
Well, the red is a good thing, right?
No, it's bad.
It is?
It's the big orange, so it's gotta be darker or like when
It's gotta be
it's
darker.
scraped off, it's like his actual skin. So
But isn't it dead, probably?
I think the little bit got on the edges again, so it's new.
It's new?
I don't know. It's super red. I feel like it is.
Yeah.
I think it's trying to survive.
I know, I'm surprised. It's... Yeah, oh, it's... How's it looking? Annie?
God, he's peeing.
As you're shining, you're like a cop. And
I
he's
don't
just...
see any glowing.
Okay, good. Hopefully it is fresh skin. That's just a
He
little
just
bright
let
red
me
right
do it
now.
while he peed.
Let me take a pits. Let me take a pits. Dang. Nolan. Like a granola bar. Hmm? What's that boy yelling at?
Oh, hello? Hello? What's up? He's probably getting a snack. Oh, he's back.
We gotta check on the dog. Wait, who's on, right? What are you talking about?
The boys. I'm talking to the boys.
Squad. Is this Overwatch 1?
Overwatch. I don't think Overwatch 1 exists anymore.
What? It was such a classic. Where is it?
I'll watch. Overwatch. I'll Overwatch the Overwatch, yes. I'm not an ogre witch. Okay.
There's a really bright light in the road.
Huh?
There's a really bright light in the road. It's just a car stuck in the middle of the street.
It's a UFO.
Ray, stop. They don't drive cars. UFOs don't drive cars. I was hoping it was. It was a really bright light.
I know.
Freaking rich people in their LEDs.
You're like the guy in Notes that's like
Which one? The sun?
the Asian one.
I don't remember him. I think I fell asleep.
Well, he thought that the aliens chose him.
I wish they chose me. That'd be lit.
And then he
I
got
chose
eaten.
them. You got eaten? Yeah, but the aliens in that movie were mean. And honestly,
I don't think they were mean. I don't think they were anything. I think they were just eating food.
yeah, but like good aliens would be like have like infinite sustenance just on board all the time, just producing like super protein crackers or something.
Maybe.
Just like cubes. And use them. One cube with GG, that match was a grind. Stephen P, thank you. That was a grind. We out here grinding it. Stephen P? Were you the Vane? My brother's name is Stephen and he loves Vane. Whoa, that name. Chamath Palihapitiya. Palihapitiya.
Whether it's real or not, I don't know, but I find that fascinating data. And again, it's these or not 10-year-olds can't lie like that. And so, whether it's real or not, I don't know, but I find that fascinating data. And again, it's these unconnected stories of individuals with the same story that is worthy of further.
60 kids saw UFO.
Yeah, so here we are, humans with limited cognitive capacities, trying to make sense of the world, trying to understand what is real and not. We have this DNA that somehow, in complex ways, is interacting with the environment, and then we get these novel ideas that come from the populace, and then they make us wonder about what it all
UFO.
means, and so how to interpret it. If you think from an alien perspective, how would you communicate with other lifelike organisms? You perhaps have to find endpoints on this interaction between the DNA and its manifestations in terms of
Where are you making that?
human mind
It looks
and
good.
how it interacts with the environment. So it gets some kind of, all right, what is this DNA? What is this environment? I have to get in somehow
Right.
to like interact
That
with
was
it to
excuse.
perturb the system to where these little ants, human,
Your
and
excuse.
how it interacts with the environment
You
You-
burped.
Oh.
in terms of the interaction between the DNA and its manifestations in terms of the human mind and how it interacts with the environment. So it gets some kind of, all right, what is this DNA? What is this environment? I have to get in somehow
Right.
to like interact with it to perturb the system to where these little ants, human like ants, get like excited and figure
And see
stuff
something.
out. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and then somehow steer them. First of all, for investigative purposes, understand like oftentimes to understand a system, you have to perturb it.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
have to like poke at it to get
Yeah.
they get excited or not. And then the other way is you want to, if you worry about them, you can steer in one direction or another.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of idea that we're not taking care of our world, um, that's interesting. I mean, that's comforting. That's hopeful because that means the greater intelligence, which is what I would hope, would want to take care of us.
Like we want to take care of the gorillas in the national parks in Africa.
Yeah, but
Right.
we don't want to take care of cockroaches. So there's a line we
The one from the
draw.
90s.
You have to hope that.
Right now, we're a bunch of angry monkeys, and maybe whatever these intelligences are also keeping an eye on us.
They're like,
makes sense.
they better not drop that
nuke.
nuke.
You don't want
But
the angry
it's-
monkey troop.
That one
it's
swollen fellow better
stomping
not
around
drop a
local
nuke.
galactic arm.
Do you
Yeah,
think these
exactly.
folks are telling
What
the
I
truth?
said.
Do you think they saw?
Is
what
it
they-
actually a
they saw?
2000 ship?
I think they saw what they said they saw, but I also think they saw what they were shown. I mean, if you go back to the whole notion of, okay, how long has this been around? It didn't just start showing up in 1947, right? There are stories going back, into the 1800s of people who saw things in their farm fields in the U.S. It's in local newspapers from the 1800s. It's fascinating. But if you can go even further back, so to your point of how would you, as a higher intelligence, represent yourself to a lesser intelligence? Well, let's go back to pre-civilization. Maybe you show yourself as the spirits in the forest, and you give messages through that. Once you get a little bit more civilized,
Probably do a
then
couple
you show yourself
flybys.
as the gods, and then you're God. Well, we don't believe in God anymore necessarily. Not everybody does. So what do we believe in? We believe in technology. So you show yourself as a form of technology, right? But the common thread is you're not alone, and there's something else here with you, and there's something that's, as you said, watching you, and at least watching over your shoulder.
Yeah, it makes.
But I think that, like
I
any good parent,
think
you
it's
don't
hopeful.
tell your student everything. You make them learn. And learning requires mistakes, because if you tell them everything, then they get lazy.
You've looked at the brains of, or information coming from the brain of some of the people that have had UFO encounters. What's common about the brain of people who encounter UFOs?
So the study started with a group of, let's say, a cohort of individuals that were brought to me and their MRIs to ask about the damage that had been seen in these individuals. It turns out that the majority of those patients ended up being, as far as we can tell, Havana syndrome. And so,
Who's that?
for me at least, that part of the story ends in terms of the injury. It's likely almost all Havana syndrome. That's somebody else's problem now. That's not my problem. But when we were looking at the brains
the
of these
heck?
individuals, we noticed something right in the center of the basal ganglia in many of these individuals that at first we thought was damage. It was basically an enriched patch
Oh.
of MRI dense neurons that we thought was damage, but then it was showing up in everybody, and then we looked and we said, oh, it's actually not. The other readings on these MRIs show that actually that's living tissue. That's actually at the head of the caudate and the putamen. And at the time, and I remember even asking a good friend of mine at Stanford, who is a psychiatrist, what does the basal ganglia do? He said, oh, the basal ganglia is just about movement and nerve and motor control. And I said, well, that's odd because, these other papers that we were reading at the time started to suggest that it was involved with higher intelligence and is actually downstream of the executive function and involved with intuition and planning. And then if you think about it,
Huh.
if you're going to have motor control, which is centralized in one place, motor control requires knowledge of the environment. You don't want to move something and hit the table. Or if you're walking across a room, you want to be aware and cognizant of what you might bump into. So obviously, all of that planning is requires access to all the senses. It requires access to your desires, memory, knowledge of where and what you want, and desire to walk near or by. Like I use the example of you're at a party, you want to avoid that person, you like that person, the waiter's about to drop something. All without thinking, you maneuver. So that actually, all that planning is done in the basal ganglia. And it's actually now called the brain within the brain. It's a goal processing system subservient to executive function. So what we think we found there was not something which allows people to talk to UFOs. I mean, I think the UFO community took it a step too far. What I think we found was a form of higher functioning and processing. So what we then looked at, and this was the most fascinating part of it, we looked then at individuals in the families of those, let's say the index case individuals, and we found that it was actually in families. And more so, this is the most fascinating part. We've probably looked now at about 200 just random cases that you can download off of databases online. You don't see this higher connectivity. You only find it in what Kit Green would have called or has called higher functioning individuals, people who are, he called them savants. I don't have the means to, we haven't done the testing, but as it turns out, my family has it, right? We found it in me, my brother, my sister, my mother. We found it as well in other individuals, husband and wife pairs. So statistically, if you had a group of 20 individuals and you found two husband-wife pairs, both of whom had it, and yet it's only found in about, we think, 1 in 200, 1 in 300 individuals. The fact that two individuals came together, two sets of individuals came together, both of whom had it, implied either a restricted breeding group or attraction. The reason why it seems to be in, let's say, so-called experiencers or people who claim, if intuition is the ability to see something that other people don't, and I don't mean that in a paranormal sense, but being able to see something that's in front of you that other people might just dismiss, well, maybe that's a function of a higher kind of intelligence to say, well, I'm not looking at an artifact. I'm not looking at something that I should just ignore. I'm seeing something and I recognize it for not what it is, but that it is something different than is normally found in my environment.
Yeah, I have a little bit of that. I seem to see the magic in a lot of moments. Like I have a deep, it's obviously, not obviously, but it seems to be chemical in nature that I just am excited about life. I love life. I love like stupid things. It feels like I'm high a lot on like mushrooms or something. something like that, where you'd really appreciate that. So I'm able to detect something about the environment that maybe others don't. I don't know, but like I seem to be over the top grateful to be alive on for a lot of stupid reasons, and that's in there somewhere. I mean, it's kind of interesting because it really is true that our brains, the way we're brought up, but also the genetics, enables us to see certain slices of the world, and um, some people are probably more receptive to anomalous information. They see the magic, the possibility in the novel thing,
Right.
as opposed to kind of finding the pattern of the common, of the regular. Some people are more, wait a minute, this is kind of weird. I mean, a lot of those people probably become scientists too. Like, huh, like there was this pattern happening over and over and over, and then something weird just happened. And then you get excited by that weirdness and start to pull the string and discover what is at the core of that weirdness.
Right.
And perhaps is that, maybe by way of question, how does the human perception system deal with anomalous information, do you think?
Well, it first tries to classify it and get it out of the way. If it's not food, if it's not sex, right? If it's not in the way of my desires, or if it is in the way of my desires, then you focus on it. And so I think the question is how much spare processing power, how much CPU cycles do we spend on things that are not those core desires?
What is the most kind of